everybody, and welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. This week, we are talking about 1988's Dead Ringers, picked by Kyle, which, Kyle, I have a theory that this probably has to do with a new TV series that is available, but also, you know, at the time that we're releasing this episode, your Seed and Spark campaign is done, but
yes.
I'm guessing that the Cronenberg-ness of your concept and watching what is somehow both the tamest Cronenberg movie and also the most horrific Cronenberg movie simultaneously just felt like a good vibe to you, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's you're correct on all levels, and also apparently I have a thing for incestual storylines in films that I've picked for this show. A thing is not the right word. It just happens to be. It just happens
predelication.
to be. Yeah, there's something going on. Well, and I mean, from the most exploitative, like Burial Ground and Party Line, all the way up to, it's not nuanced by any means, but it's certainly something more highbrow.
I mean, but then where does American Gothic fit into that?
American Gothic,
really, there's quite a few Kyle picks. I would wager an Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Next Generation. I feel like I gotta maybe
slow my roll a little bit.
I know you've been with us for a long time, but if we're looking at the entirety of the HMN back catalog, I would say that every single movie with incestuous undertones is a Kyle pick.
Yeah, maybe Brian. And that's not his fault. I don't think that's just. I think that might be a blind pick, but I think most of them are probably me.
Yeah, that's okay. We accept you.
I think that there's something. Well, I guess I don't want to talk about it. But it's kind of, I don't know. It's one of those like tropes that is usually taken so far away from, like, I mean, if you were to talk about like actual incest, it's really sad and scary and horrific, but then like when they use it as a horror movie trope, it is like just thrown so far out of left field that it's not even in the same ballpark as like what
it's
the
always
horrific,
like 9 times out of 10 it's like a third act reveal to like make everyone be like, oh my god,
right.
That explains everything. It's like the result that they want us to have, when it's like, no, this is like a truly terrible, like scarring thing that can happen to a person, but thank you, Roger Corman and Charles Band, for thinking that it's a way to pad out your 70-minute movie with a quick shock in the middle.
This one, I mean, I mainly picked it because we have the TV show coming up, and watching this, and this is actually a first-time watch for me. I've been poked and prodded
This might be my second watch.
This is my second and last, because this movie is very dry in my it's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's beautiful in the same way that every Cronenberg movie is beautiful. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many Cronenberg movies that I can watch, but only a few that I could watch more than once.
Right.
Like there's, like, maybe like Videodrome I could see myself occasionally revisiting, but like
maybe 10 years ago, but not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, James Woods has done a lot of damage, but like
no shit.
But like in general, his stuff is just like. I've said this before about other filmmakers. I think I said it one time about like PTA. It's gorgeous, but it's so rarely something I want to revisit after I've watched it. Like, it's like, oh my god, this is you're watching a true artist paint with like the most interesting strokes. Like one of the very first notes I wrote down was like the skill of Cronenberg that I have to give credit for is in 7 minutes, he takes us through 30 years of these characters' lives that a lesser filmmaker, that would be like an hour of the movie, is just like, let's go through their entire, and it's just like, nope, here are the quick bullet points that you need to know, and now we're in the movie. I also love when I research this movie that this is like, it's based on, on two people, and it's like, yeah, it was just based on these two identical twins who are gynecologists that had like a weird death circumstance, and everything else is just Cronenberg, just like throwing shit at the wall just because he's Cronenberg.
Yeah. Well, and then so there's the novel by Barry Wood and some other author who I'm totally forgetting, who was not so popular, not a super popular horror author or sci-fi author, but maybe I guess apparently more in the maybe the medical thriller genre.
Back
of
when
things,
medical
but-
thrillers. Thank you, Michael Crichton.
Yeah, dude, for real. Like medical thrillers had their time and place, and then they just end up becoming horror. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a small window of
where's the
opportunity,
line, right? You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, then they just end up being somebody slashing everybody with a scalpel, and it's like, well, you didn't go very far from just like a horror novel.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, Cronenberg has some really gross, shocking stuff in all of his movies. But this movie, as dry as it is, and maybe that's why it is, it's such a... Actually, the word I'm going to use, because it feels so fitting, is sterile. Like, the whole movie just feels very sterile. So then when you get these moments, like the weird dream sequence with, like, them being connected.
The umbilical cord, yeah.
Yeah, like, there's, like, shit like that where it's, like, I feel like it's extra horrific. Versus, like, when you're watching Videodrome, you've just seen so much weird, gross, fucked up shit at a certain point that it, like, just kind of it just goes right over you. Like, it's kind of like when we talked about Dead Alive. Like, watching Dead Alive as a kid, at a certain point, the violence is so much that it almost loses its effect to you because you're just like, all right, like, I know I'm desensitized to it. Because this movie is so dry, it's like when those really gnarly moments show up, it's like upsetting. Like the scene where he's giving the one woman an examination is like the most upsetting, horrifying thing I think I've ever watched in a Cronenberg movie.
Yeah, that
and
part
it's
is
like
really...
and
you
you're
don't
not
see
seeing
anything. You just see facial expressions.
Well, which is crazy coming from The Fly. You know, in its own right, a scientific medical anomaly that's goopy and gross. And then you're right, leading right in. I mean, this is the next film after that, completely sterile. But I would maybe even say equally horrifying in watching these doctors, or this, if you want to call it a singular doctor, you know, completely declining and going against everything that they are supposed to be as doctors. I mean, from the jump. I mean, they were sketchy from the jump, no doubt.
As
but...
kids.
You
like
know,
a
but
little girl
so
yelling "fuck off, freaks" is a great way to kick off the movie. It really
Yeah.
sets you up for what this is.
Yeah.
Can I tell you guys, that's my only note. I
fuck off,
watched this
freaks.
movie and I was like, I don't know what to say. Like,
Yeah,
I
my notes are
watched it,
very
and
limited, but I knew that I had things to discuss, but not in the lens of a normal horror movie night episode.
Thank you.
No,
So-
and this doesn't. And this is not a normal horror movie night movie by any means.
Welcome to the 400 episodes of Horror Movie Night.
Yeah, we're only doing Criterion collection now.
This, I mean, the copy that I have of this was a beautiful double disc Blu-ray that Scream Factory put out. That
nice.
like it. I mean, it again. The restorations that they do on these movies, like it. Again, it's a movie that I will probably. I won't say I'll never watch, but I can't think of when I will willingly watch it again. Like, it's on
not
the
coming
shelf.
out on Weird Ass Movie Night, you know?
No, it's like one of those ones where, like, I'm sure if Tessa came over my house again, this would be
Yes.
some shit that she would want to watch because she's like, she's a hoe for Cronenberg and some Lynch. So like, I'm sure she'd be like, oh, I haven't seen Dead Ringers, pop that in, and then I'm like, great, I got this for 2 hours.
Yeah, well, so here's the funny thing about you're like, oh, it's such a great, my Blu-ray looks beautiful, the restoration is amazing. You watch this on HBO Max, it's like a VHS rip. And here's the funnier thing is, well, first of all, it's definitely not the restoration on HBO Max. The funnier thing about it is the fact that it's still fucking gorgeous. Like, it's not a good rip, but it's still really pretty. And it's because they probably used the most expensive film stock you could get in 1988. And it's just, it's beautifully shot. You know, this movie is more about, so, okay, this may be a bit of a, like, this is a slightly hot take, like a overly warm hot take.
Yeah.
You know, it's not lukewarm, but it's not going to burn the roof of your mouth. I would say that a lot of Cronenberg is more style over substance, very similar to Argento. Like when you watch Suspiria, there's really not, Cronenberg is definitely more of a story, like a plot-driven writer-director, but at the same time, when there's a movie like this that the storyline feels so secondary because you know what's happening, and like you don't need 2 hours to see. So the conceit of this movie, for people who don't know, is that there are these twin gynecologists who are very, very talented, but also completely detached from regular human emotion, and they they have a practice, and the less extroverted one, gets involved with a drug abusing aging movie star, and then basically it leads to his psychosis, and one of them dies. But
well, theoretically, I think both of them die.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the very last line, or the very last
moment
shot
is like a drug withdrawal or whatever.
Yeah,
because they have this whole identical twin connection that carries them through this psychosis that you're talking about.
Yeah.
There is a moment. There is times where you're kind of unsure of who's who, the same way that the rest of that environment is a little unsure of who's who.
I think that Jeremy Irons did a great job of having affectations that showed if he was Elliot or Bev.
Did you read
Very
about
true.
the dressing room factoid?
Yeah,
I found this
thought that was
fascinating.
super cool.
No, sure.
So they had.
I don't read that stuff because
You don't need
that
to.
if there's something interesting enough, you will tell me.
Yeah,
or if there's
so-
something so stupid, you will also tell me.
Yes.
Yeah. So the long and short of it was that Cronenberg set up 2 separate dressing rooms for Jeremy Irons for him to use depending on which twin he was going to play. And Jeremy Irons' decision was to actually move everything into a single dressing room because he was like, if the point is that these two get lost inside of each other, I should also have to struggle with knowing who I'm playing at any given moment.
This just makes me so happy. That is such a lovely intention, and then also a lovely response of the actor to that intention to then validate but also do something for themselves. That's masterful. Great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh, and Jeremy Irons, really
his
did an
performances.
amazing job.
It's one of those things where you're like, I don't think anyone else. A lot of actors were afraid to do. We're like,
De
no,
Niro
can't do it.
was going to do it, right? And then he
was
had
like,
a
I
conflict.
can't. He had a conflict, and someone else just said, I struggle enough to play a single character, let alone playing 2 characters. It would be.
This is probably
it'd be
his
too
second
much.
best role to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, I think that he would agree with that for sure.
Oh boy.
So I do want to mention with just Cronenberg in general, I'm looking at the Cronenberg list, and this is no duh, Kelly, but I think it's worth saying. Cronenberg, when I'm looking at this, I would say Cronenberg and Lynch fall into this category that I think we're seeing with people like Mike Flanagan, that we're seeing with Ari Aster, that we've seen for a long time with Del Toro, where not every movie that they've made is a horror movie, but every movie they've made feels like it has the threat of being a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like this movie walks that fine line where it's really at the end of the day, it's kind of a psychological drama thriller, but but it's really unsettling and disturbing, kind of in the same way of Hereditary for most of it is a drama, but it's in that drama that's the most horrific stuff. The drama of the movie is more terrifying than the actual supernatural horror of those movies. And I think that, I don't think it's an accident that these filmmakers also say, oh, I'm a huge Cronenberg fan and I'm a huge Lynch fan, because I think those were the 2 biggest filmmakers that made it okay for your film to exist outside of a definable genre.
Yeah.
and be a stew of all of this stuff.
Well, and I think that's what makes them, and this is coming from a horror fan, but I'm also a film fan, and that makes their craft really interesting. It's if Cronenberg were to go direct a comedy, he would do it. You know what I mean? I don't think that's certainly his intention, because he's an artist with a voice that has particular things that he likes to talk about. But at the same time, it's given that task, and maybe not Lynch. Maybe not Lynch. But there are certain filmmakers who could do that.
So Kyle, you don't know this, but way back when we were doing Reddit Horror Club, I made a very controversial pick, which was that I had us watch Sunset Boulevard, which is definitively not a horror movie. But my reason for picking it was that I was this movie is 100% shot with the knowledge of how Universal horror films are shot, to put this element of just there is an uneasiness in every single frame of that movie, even though it is mostly just a straightforward, like, drama with a murder in it. Like,
Right.
but like,
Right.
And,
but it's also like the horrors of life a little bit.
It's
that,
a ghost
you know?
story too, just so you guys know.
Yes,
You know?
yes, it is.
I would
And it's the
consider
same thing
Sunset
with-
Boulevard a horror movie.
I mean,
yeah.
the one that was less controversial but still falls in that same vein was one of the first episodes of Horror Movie Night when we did Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, where it was like, again,
but that
this movie
gave me such an ick.
That's what I mean. It's like, is it traditionally a horror movie? No. Is it probably more unsettling than most of the other actual horror movies released in the 60s? Abso-fucking-lutely.
Well, I love when those types of movies show up on those like long lists of like, you know, top 100 horror movie moments. Like the guy from behind the dumpster in Mulholland Drive. It's like Mulholland Drive is not a horror movie, but a particular moment, and plus, I mean, but it's also plus the vibe. It's not just a jump scare. It's a whole retelling of a dream that then becomes the reality that then scares you, and it's like, but you know, so, and what ever happened to Baby Jane? Though I've not seen it, I've seen it on that list. Or lists.
Kyle, you would love the shit out of Whatever Happened to Baby
I'm more
Jane.
of a whoever slew Auntie Roo person.
That's probably true, but but I am like, dude, just the combination of the campiness of that movie, its influence on drag culture, and how like horrific elements of it are, like,
it's been on my list a long time.
All fucking on board. But even again, I guess you can't talk about Cronenberg and not have Lynch kind of in that same conversation.
It's hard.
But
not to.
You know,
they are
as
both
you were leaving
Davids.
Creature Feature, I was gifted a Blu-ray of Blue Velvet, which I couldn't believe I didn't already have in my collection anyway. But again, watching that movie, there is nothing about that movie that would contextualize it as a horror movie. But like,
it's horrifying.
Dennis Hopper's performance is one of the scariest performances you can ever watch an actor do. Like, I am more scared of him than I've ever been of Jason or Freddy or Michael Myers.
No doubt.
Like,
dude. No doubt, because that dude lives down the road and is terrible.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like that's that's the stuff.
That's
they're
what
all
Cronenberg
about
does too.
Keeping it localized. Like,
yes,
like this is a movie where it's like, this could be your doctor. Like, like you could walk
not
in
our
to
doctor,
your
but
not our doctor, but
that's right. That's true. Everyone, but that's also not a note that I made, but a note that I made in my head was that, like, I'm so intrigued by how the TV show is going to
handle the role.
So
like,
Rachel Weisz is who's playing.
I mean,
for anybody that doesn't know, she's the titular, or she's Jeremy Irons', replacement, I suppose. And I'm hoping that they level up the kind of like unreality, because that's really what I wanted from what I've always wanted from this movie is more unreality. I want it to be more Cronenberg, but that's also a selfish thing because I am not highbrow enough to truly,
I mean, the most
get
unreality
it.
you get is the tools that he has created.
Yes,
in that scene. Like that's point
true.
where you're like, this is like, you almost, because of how fucked up the one dream sequence is, part of you believes that the revealing of those tools is also a dream sequence because it feels so unrealistic, but like horrific.
No, I'm eager to see them explore that a little bit more, because this is kind of a mad scientist movie. It's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde. It's kind of a few things that we've seen before, though wasn't the priority in exploring it in like a feature length version. So I'm interested in seeing if they explore a little bit of that decline, a little bit of that like true sort of like, what the fuck are they doing? Both of them as separate doctors, but then as a business entity, as a professional entity. I'm very intrigued. It's one of those things that, and Scott, you talked about on your hot takes how bad of a movie The Exorcist is, but the TV show fucking kills.
I need to watch it. I haven't watched it.
The TV show is I mean, really good. It's good. It's a great show, and I was really upset when it got canceled. I thought that it was great. It was such a good exploration of that concept in space without having to stay in 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
I feel like Dead Ringers, as much as I did enjoy this watch, and I think it's a great standalone thing, I'm intrigued by the concept so much more that I think a series with an excellent actress is going to be really cool. Like, I'm really excited for it.
I agree.
I want to say one thing though. It's been kind of sticking in my craw the entire time I've been my little craw finger with that I'm going to menace on top of a female patient. So I was thinking about like The Wound Within. I've been thinking about Cronenberg and kind of the overlap, and the thing for me that I think is kind of a disservice to people that do body horror, because I love body horror. I think the body horror is a really great, viable. Still, there's still a lot to unpack. I think there'll always be something to unpack about body horror. I mean, it's the story can be very similar, but it's all about the way your characters react to it. And it can be done well, it can be done poorly. Obviously, we've seen a lot of both in our separate lives of watching horror and dramas and things like that. But I think that it's kind of a disservice to people to be like, oh, that's so Cronenberg, because it's like, this is it's pigeonholing someone to be like this. If it's body horror, it has to have this visual style. It has to have this kind of like affectation. It's very similar to how I also very much love and appreciate Lovecraftian things. And it basically has morphed into this idea that, like, if you have elder gods, if you have anything with tentacles, if you have anything that's a deep sea monster, if you have anything that's got a cult in it, it's Lovecraftian, like The Void, which I guess I would consider a Lovecraftian film. It's too bad, because I feel like it's just a disservice to people that love those tropes to like either body horror or like elder gods, Cthulhu. I mean, Cthulhu is just Cthulhu is a concept. It's not like that it's been done a million ways. Right. I mean, Underwater is considered a Lovecraftian movie because of the last act of it, and I mean, I guess I have also called it Lovecraftian because it is probably the closest thing we'll get.
But that's just a reference point more than the actual like heart of it, right?
Yeah,
like,
I think that it just is a way to punch down on art. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, and it's too bad because I think that there's a lot left to say about both types.
Yeah, I think that it falls into two categories, really, because you know what I mean, like to say something is Cronenbergian, right? Like to throw that around. It is 100% a compliment to David Cronenberg. It's like you have
established.
Not a compliment
to the people that are doing it.
It's not
now,
a compliment to the people. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like it's the same thing with.
Or this is derisive. This is
this is derivative.
Wow.
Yeah, it's derivative of
derivative.
But you know what I mean. Like because the thing that I think of, probably the biggest one that we've witnessed in our little scope of film people, right, is like circa 2000. We'll say 1998 to 2002. How many people were like, that's pretty. Oh, they've got a lot of Tarantino influence there. Which what they just meant was, they made a crime film that had some quippy dialogue. Right. But like what it actually, it's a compliment to, hey, Quentin Tarantino in a very short period of time made a very distinct style that like was influential. But what it's also saying to that filmmaker is, you're a fucking hack, get in your own lane, you're no Tarantino.
Yeah.
In like the most backhanded kind of way.
There is a double-edged there is a double-edged sword. I mean, to doing that. I mean, we're using Cronenbergian as a descriptive word when talking about our short film The Wound Within, and certainly it was an influence on us visually, but also in the way of like using the body in horror. And so it's not like it's used. We're using it. I feel like we're using it. Yes, as an influence, but more of like a net to cast so that people will understand
point, right?
and trust. Yeah, it's exactly. It's a reference point, and it's like so. It is tough. It's tough to continue to be like it is that. Because I mean, yes, of course, I want people to be like to think of our film in the sense of something like Cronenberg, which is thought of so highly. But at the same time, it's also a pitching point to be like, but also take a risk and take 10 minutes out of your day and give us a shot. Because yes, you'll connect it with that and you'll see our influence, but it'll also be something completely different and standalone and our own voice. So it's like it's tough when there's been over 100 years of cinema to then reference and of art to reference, let alone any other media that you try to reference beyond it, painting, performance art, even back further, music, so on and so forth. It's like it's tough. It's a double-edged sword, and all you want to do is live up to those expectations.
Yeah,
that you set for yourself. I mean, I did it to myself. I put Cronenberg in the description.
Yeah. The other irony of all of it, though, is like in so many of those cases, the person who you're looking at as influential, like in this case, the Tarantino, or I would even people describe things as having a Tarantino style, but then you ask Tarantino, he's like, oh, I pulled influences from like these weird grindhouse like spaghetti westerns, or like for a while people were like, oh, that has a very Kevin Smith dialogue, but Kevin Smith would be the first person to say my dialogue was inspired by old Richard Linklater movies, or like films that have a Wes Anderson aesthetic, but Wes Anderson's like, I'm taking everything from the French New Wave movement of the 70s and 80s. Like, it's just that someone borrowed a thing and they had their own unique twist, and people really latched on to that unique twist. But then, God forbid, a smaller artist also takes a similar influence and does their unique twist. Then they're like the hack that's trying to steal the vibe. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but Cronenberg's not the first person to do fucking body horror in a movie.
No.
He just has a very distinct look to the body horror he did. And he gave him an edge.
He had great budgets too. That's a huge
no
addition
doubt.
to
I mean, to think about the immediate aftermath of this is Naked Fucking Lunch. Which is an impossible piece of art to then turn into another piece of art, which he did. It's bonkers.
He did and didn't simultaneously.
He did and didn't.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things where it's like, this is the best adaptation you could ever get out of an unadaptable story.
Yeah.
And he went the route of this is Naked Lunch, and I will film some scenes from the book, but instead I'm going to make it about the guy who wrote the book because the book is nonsense. The book is drug-fueled nonsense.
Yeah.
It would be like trying to make a movie based on the verbatim of On the Road by Jack Kerouac. It's like, no, the movie you would make would be the story of Jack Kerouac writing On the Road, because to take those essays and try to turn it into something, it would just be
impossible.
It's just rambling. It's rambling, non-punctuated chaos for 300 pages.
Yeah.
It's why you see that with Hunter S. Thompson stuff. Hunter S. Thompson stuff is never a direct adaptation of the book.
No.
It's a retelling of what he was going through when writing the book.
Yes, right. Yeah. So, and we have just so much access to all of these reference points now that using them both as the reference point, like we're saying, but then also to be compared to such, or to pitch as such, Tarantino-esque, Cronenberg-esque, whatever. It's a blessing and a curse to be able to do so, I guess. You know. It's it's interesting times. Dead Ringers!
And The Wound Within.
Yes, and The Wound Within. Thank you, Scott. I always forget to do that.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Well, this was a great episode of Scholarly Movie Night, but let's real quick, Kyle, you got a double feature for this band.
So I actually have a podcast to pair this with.
Ooh.
It's a podcast that on that Syracuse trip that I referred to a couple episodes ago, Evan turned me on to a podcast called The Sound Serious. And it is a satirical podcast that kind of makes fun of Serial and other true crime podcasts about a journalist who goes out and each season it's a different crime, but this journalist goes out in season 1 is what I would pair it with. Season 1 is about a weatherman who gets killed but also has a twin brother who may or may not have been involved in the murder, and they get in touch with the twin brother, who is he's so weird. He's so weird. Think about Coach Steve from Big Mouth.
Okay.
Like, maybe toned down, like, by half. Like, as if Coach Steve was a real person, so he had to function in reality.
Gotcha.
He and his twin brother have always been together, and he and his twin brother have always been together and have like done everything together. And they used to like manage bands, and then his brother became a weatherman, so then he's like riding the coattails, but maybe not. It's really fun, and it's very lighthearted. The episodes are like maybe 30 minutes. It's kind of it's partially my what did I watch this week too, but
it's okay. We're gonna do the same thing for this week.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're all on board. Scott, what is your double feature?
I'm not saying that I'm going to enjoy it, but Possession from was like 1980.
I feel like that's like been on the almost maybe list for years.
No, but I mean, we got a Criterion collection it up. We're doing 2 in a row. That's gonna be a punishing 4.5 hours. I tell you what.
Yeah. Possession was also a little bit of influence for Jeanette's script, so you're on the money with what we're looking at here.
All right. And what about you, Matt?
Right. I'm gonna pair it with another Cronenberg that also kind of similar to Kyle will like be a very gentle. What did I watch this week? I finally watched Crimes of the Future.
Very nice. I almost went with that.
Yeah, it's like it really does kind of fit like the story, like just the beats and the visuals. It's obviously way more what you expect out of Cronenberg than Dead Ringers, but because it has this weird kind of medical angle to it, it feels like it pairs better than most other Cronenberg stuff for me. And before we dive into what did we watch this week, we had 2 emails that have been sitting in our inbox forever. These are both from 2022, but I wanted to read them very quickly because we haven't done an email reading in a hot minute. First one is from our friend Tom. It's a very quick email. He just said, when discussing a movie, one of the following three things will always happen in that discussion. 1, Matt will reminisce about the box art. 2, Scott will remind us that it was somewhere on his long list. Or 3, Kyle will say that Vinegar Syndrome put it out recently.
He knows it too well.
It hurts.
Yeah. It's accurate, but it hurts. And then the second email from a man who at one point had shown up on this podcast as a guest many a times, Cannon, had written an email after we did our episode on Tobe Hooper's Eaten Alive. And he said, "Hey guys, I just wanted to say I loved the Eaten Alive episode. As always, you were on point with your research, analysis, and discussion." Which, coming from Canyon, I can't tell if that's sincere or sarcasm.
Yeah, I really can't either.
Yeah, I don't remember
I
talking
think it might
about
be
it
both.
Yeah.
He goes, "I wanted to share a bit of trivia about the scythe-wielding maniac, Neville Brand.
Yes.
Brand was a highly decorated World War II war hero and won the Silver Star and the Purple Heart, among many other medals. But he suffered terribly from PTSD, which drove him to drink. A little-known fact, alcohol can cause PTSD in some cases. And this led to his very early death in 1992. Brand lived in and was buried not far from where I'm from. It's bizarre and sad that a real-life hero can only play villains throughout his 40-year career as an actor. Anyway, hope you guys are doing great and that your Christmas will be amazing." To also just put a stamp on how old this was.
You know what, dude? It was. Thank you. Great Christmas.
But yeah, just wanted to read those as a reminder of like, hey, hmnpodcasts@gmail.com. I like
Give us 6 months. We'll read it.
Eventually we'll get around to it. But yeah, shoot us some emails over there. Scott, I need you to also refresh me. What are we all talking about for what did we watch this week?
Megan with a 3.
With a 3. All right.
Yeah. So
I was almost
been
thought
waiting
that we
for a
had
couple
talked
weeks
about it,
to
so.
No, because you guys were going to. I was like, I'm watching it tonight.
Yes.
All right, well, then I will table my
Yeah.
plan to talk about SCRITERION, which also came out recently.
Well, so what did Megan think of her biopic? What did she think? Was she excited about it, or?
I was like, we'll watch it together, and she was like, and she put it off for a couple days. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna watch it, and I'll start watching it if it's any good. Like, I'll pause it and we'll start it together. Like, we'll start over.
Megan, get in here!
But yeah, it was dumb as fuck. I didn't hate it, but it was like the thing that I hate so much about movies is when everyone is a shithead. You know, like literally every adult in this movie is an asshole. So
We all watched the unrated version on Peacock, right?
Correct.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a key element.
Yeah.
My biggest note from this movie, and I'm going to bring it up here because I've talked to multiple people about this, and I want to make sure that we're all in agreement here as well. That there is a moment where there is a bully who steals the Megan doll and he throws it on the ground. Did you two also have a moment of, is this kid about to fuck this doll?
Yeah, no, my mind immediately went to Last House on the Left.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Like I was like, wait, what?
I was positive.
about to
I was
show
sure it was
me
gonna
in
happen.
this movie?
Yeah,
I was horrified for a split second.
I was
and,
not
I mean, it was
feeling
still,
that.
Yeah, it still wasn't great, but we do get that close up of his ear being ripped off of his head, which
Fantastic.
is pretty fucking gnarly. And
Yeah.
then hit by a truck.
Yeah, I mean,
And also that hit by a truck scene was pretty graphic. Like if
Yeah,
I
it's
remember correctly, the dummy that they used like got rolled over and then scraped along the ground. It was way more
gnarly.
than I was expecting.
Yeah, it was the movie, and I think I said this during our hot takes episode, but in case I didn't, I will repeat it. The thing that pisses me off the most about Megan is how many people shit all over the Child's Play remake when this is the exact same fucking movie, and people
Yeah.
are like praising Megan. They're like, "Oh, Megan's so much fun," and I'm like, "So's the fucking Child's Play remake," and it's almost beat for beat the same movie.
The thing though is that Megan is its own property.
IP. Yeah.
Yeah, and Child's Play has a lot of baggage with it. I loved the Child's Play remake. Now, do I think it's the best Child's Play movie? No, but
But I think it's in the discussion.
I think that I think that it's my second favorite. You know,
Yeah,
like Child's Play
it's a
2 is
lot
my
of fun.
favorite. I will rewatch Child's Play 2 any day. If anybody were to be like, "Hey, do you want to watch Child's Play 2?" I'd be like, "Hell yeah." If people are like, "Do you want to watch Child's Play 2019 or whatever it was, 2018?" I'd be like, "Hell yeah." If people are like, "Do you want to watch Child's Play?" I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, like the original, I would, you'd have to convince me.
That's probably, I should have said that. That's my hottest take of them all, is that the first Child's Play is definitively the worst one in the franchise.
Well, Seed of Chucky, I have not
you
seen.
of
Wait,
course
did
you
we do-
love
No,
Child's
no,
Play 3, Matt.
Yeah,
Like-
yeah, Matt loves Child's Play 3.
I don't love Child's Play 3, but here's the thing. And I know we're already way off track with Megan,
That's
but
fine.
I this needs to be said.
It's adjacent.
The thing that hurts me with Child's Play, the original, is there's like 20 minutes of that movie where they run off to talk to the voodoo guy, and
Yeah.
that movie just stops dead in its fucking tracks to me.
I do forget that.
Where like Child's
Yeah.
Play 3, as dumb as it is, that movie moves. You get your cool, and you get a killer fucking third act set piece inside that roller coaster. Like
Yeah.
there,
you know,
there
Matt
are
loves
cool-
a dark ride.
I love a
Yeah.
dark ride in a movie. So like, and I also think that that's the one where I love in Child's Play 2 and 3 that we get a cool fucked up doll. Like in that one, I think it's his face gets sliced off, so it's almost like this combination of wires, but also like muscle because most of his flesh is back. There's cool shit in Child's Play
You're
3. It's a
selling me on
bad
Child's Play
movie,
3,
but
yeah.
I just think it's not as bad as some would say. Same with Megan. Like, I don't think that Megan's worthy of all the praise it gets, but I also don't think it's worthy of any of the hate that it gets. It's such an
haven't heard any
inoffensive,
hate,
middle-of-the-road movie. I mean, it's mostly just
that's
like,
just
that's
me.
dumb, that's not scary.
Well, it's
Like-
not scary. It's ridiculous. Like that's
Yeah.
what all these killer doll movies are. Is they're fucking ridiculous. And you know, I know that they already greenlit a sequel, and I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I mean, I
I don't give a fuck. Like make another
could
one.
care less. You know what? Who am I here? I was about to talk about Scream 6, where in my head I'm like, we could do 10 of these fucking things. So
And
like, sure,
they
if we
will,
want to make
I'm
a
sure.
couple, if they want to make a couple more Megan movies, fine, sign me up.
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
still
I was
watch them
happier
on
with
Peacock
Megan.
after the theatrical run.
Yeah, I mean, I was happier with my watch of Megan than I was last couple months ago with Smile. Because
Yes.
they're very similar movies where they're very glossy, very expensive, very mass-produced horror movies with completely unlikable characters. Like,
Yeah.
everybody in both those movies sucks. I had more fun watching Megan is what I was getting at.
Here's my struggle with Megan. I agree with you for the most part that the characters are very unlikable. That being said, our main character, I get it. there's this scene where she's yelling at the little girl for not playing with the toy properly, and I'm like, yes.
Okay, so Matt, you do need to get killed by a doll. I know that you've worried about this your entire life. It's going to happen.
Like 100%. When she's like, the ball does more than just roll. You don't have to just roll like it does. And the little girl just wants to roll the ball. I am positive I have had almost that exact conversation with my 16-month-old niece, where it's like, this toy does more stuff. Like we could do more things with this.
Watch this.
So I get it. I'm like, I can't hate a person who doesn't want to be a parent, has a room filled with collectible toys that they're very proud of, who suddenly is like, great, I got to be a parent. I got to figure this shit out. Like, and they want to play with my collectibles. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
She survives, so I'm good.
Yeah, but she also learns a valuable lesson about
No,
parenting.
I wouldn't. I'd go down with my DVDs and be like, no.
It was fun. I had fun with it. It wasn't like, I don't think it was like good, but it also moved at a pace that got me through the shit that other films might have bogged me down in.
Yeah,
and
it moves.
I thought
I know we said that before,
and that's from an unrated director's cut or whatever the fuck is on HBO. So it's like that's
also
something
an hour and 35 minutes. It's not like a 2 hour opus about a killer
it's
robot.
Not a movie.
An extra 5 minutes. Yeah, is that what it is?
I feel like we're all in the same boat where like, I don't think I'm ever willingly just going to be like, ooh, I'm going to pop on Megan.
No.
But if I was hanging out with people and they're like, hey, do you want to watch Megan? I wouldn't be like, no, I'm going to leave. Like, I was like, sure. Like,
right.
Because it's not a movie that I can't imagine any scenario where you're hanging out with friends and they say, let's throw on Megan, where their intention is, let's sit quietly and watch Megan.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, let's throw this shit on in the background while we continue to have a conversation.
It does feel like Megan kind of knows a little bit of what it is compared to something like Smile, like you said, Scott, where clearly it was trying to be the scary horror movie, and Megan has so many notes where it is very clear that it's like, I mean, it can be like if you're 13 years old or whatever, and you're going to the theater with your friends, like there's something.
And we forget
there.
that that's kind of who these movies are ultimately made for.
Yeah.
Let me be completely clear. Smile and Megan are, as I said, mass-produced, very glossy, very high production value, and they're for teenagers. I get it. And
don't forget
that's fine. I still want to enjoy them.
Like, I think you remember. I'm sure you remember this, Scott. When I went and saw Truth or Dare in the theaters.
Yep. I remember.
Because that was back when I had Movie Pass and I was just reckless with my time. But like everyone hated that movie, and it's not a good movie. But like seeing Truth or Dare on a Friday night in a theater filled with high schoolers that were screaming and yelling at all of the right moments does enhance the enjoyment of the movie just a bit, because you're reminded like, oh, that's right. Like this is who the movie's directed at. Like you're not like because when you're watching that movie by yourself at 35 on your couch, you're like, this is garbage. But all right. I mean, yeah, I guess it's a very soft 2.5 out of 5 star recommend, I guess, from all of us.
Like, there's nothing I can recommend about it other than if you wanted to see it, then watch it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
didn't
deter
lie about
anybody
what it was. Like, if you saw the trailers and weren't sure.
Criterion Collection, it is not.
No. And I forgot that it's Wan, right? It's James Wan produced. So, of course, I mean, like, it's just, I mean, it doesn't, like, read like a Wan movie necessarily, only in the sense that, like, oh, it's a doll.
Yeah. Like, you're talking to well, I can't speak for Scott, but you're talking to at least one person who still rides for one of his favorite Wan movies is Dead Silence, which no one fucking likes.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun watching it for this show.
Too. Yeah. I love that half of this episode is about the movie Megan after we talked about the critically acclaimed Dead Ringers from 1988 as picked by Kyle. We'll be back next week with another horror movie night pick.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.